Welcome to Fireside Reads with Mara Hopewell. Tonight, we will be reading Yes to Life by Victor E. Frankl. Now, everything depends on what is expected of us as to what awaits us in the future. We don't need to know that any more than we are able to know it. In this connection, I often tell the following story that appeared in a short newspaper article many years ago. A black man who had been sentenced to life imprisonment was deported to Devil's Island. When the ship, the Leviathan, was on the high seas, a fire broke out. Due to the calamitous situation, the prisoner was released from his shackles and took part in the rescue work. He saved 10 lives. As a result, he was later pardoned. I ask you, if one had asked this man before embarking, in fact on the quay at Marseille, whether continuing to live could have any kind of meaning for him, he would have had to shake his head. What could possibly be waiting for him? But none of us knows what is waiting for us, what big moment, what unique opportunity for acting in an exceptional way. Just like the rescue of 10 people that black man aboard the Leviathan. Just like the rescue of 10 people by that black man aboard the Leviathan. The question life asks us, and in answering which we can realize the meaning of the present moment, does not only change from hour to hour, but also changes from person to person. The question is entirely different in each moment for every individual. We can therefore see how the question as to the meaning of life is posed too simply, unless it is posed with complete specificity. Unless it is posed with complete specificity in the correctness of here and now, to ask about the meaning of life. In this way, seems just as naive to us as the question of a reporter interviewing a world chess champion and asking, "And now, master, please tell me, which chess move do you think is best?" Is there a particular move that could be good, or even the best, beyond a very specific concrete game situation? A specific configuration of the pieces? No less naive was the young man who spoke to me one day, many years ago, as I was about to give a little seminar somewhere on the meaning of life. His words went roughly like this: "Hey, Frankl, don't be angry with me. I've been invited to my future in-laws tonight. I really do have to go, and I can't stay for your lecture. Please be so kind and tell me quickly, what is the meaning of life?" Whatever is waiting for us now, this specific challenge of the hour, may demand an answer in a different sense. First of all, our answer can be an active answer, giving an answer through action, answering specific life questions with a deed that we complete or a work that we create. But here, too, we have a number of things to bear in mind. And what I mean now is perhaps best expressed by referring to a concrete experience. One day, a young man sat in the front of me who had just confronted me about the question of the meaning or meaninglessness of life. His argument was as follows: "It's easy for you to talk. You have set up counseling centers, you help people, you straighten people out. But who am I? What am I? A tailor's assistant? What can I do? How can I give my life meaning through my actions?" This man had forgotten that it is never a question of where someone is in life or which profession he is in. It is only a matter of how he fills his place, his circle. Whether a life is fulfilled doesn't depend on how great one's range of action is, but rather only on whether the circle is filled out. In his specific life circle, every single human being is irreplaceable and inimitable, and that is true for everyone. The tasks that his life imposes are only for him, and only he is required to fulfill them. And a person who has not completely filled his relatively larger circle remains more unfulfilled than that of a person whose more closely drawn circle is sufficient. In his specific environment, the tailor's assistant can achieve more, and in the things he does and the things he leaves undone, he can lead a more meaningful life than the person he envies, as long as that person is not aware of his greater responsibility in life and does not do justice to it. So how about the unemployed? You may now object, overlooking the fact that work is not the only field in which we can actively give meaning to our lives. Does work alone make life meaningful? Let's ask the many people who complain to us, not without reason, about how meaningless their often mechanical work is, the endless adding up of columns of numbers, or the monotonous pushing and pulling of machine levers on a never-ending production line. These people can only make their lives meaningful in their all too scant spare time, filling it with the personal human meaning. On the other hand, the unemployed person who has an abundance of free time also has the chance to endow their life with meaning. No one should believe that we are so frivolous as to underestimate the economic difficulties and economically desperate situation, or in fact, the sociological or economical factors in such contexts. We know today more than ever how far the first grub, then the morals, can take us. We have no illusions about that anymore, but we know how meaningless it is to guzzle away without any morality, and how catastrophic this meaninglessness can be to anyone who is fixated only on consumption. And lastly, we know how much morality means, the unshakable belief in the unconditional meaning to life that one way or another makes life bearable. Because we have experienced the reality that human beings are truly prepared to starve if starvation has a purpose or meaning. However, we have not only witnessed how hard it is to starve if one has no morality, but we have also seen how hard it is to demand morality from a human being if one lets him starve. Once I had to give the court a psychiatric report on an adolescent boy who, in the midst of an extremely desperate situation, had stolen a loaf of bread. The court, concerned, how asked the precise question of whether the boy was inferior or not. In my report, I had to admit that from a psychiatric point of view, he could not be considered inferior in any way. But I did not do this without at the same time explaining that in his specific situation, he would have had to have been superior in order to withstand temptation in the face of such hunger. It is not only through our actions that we can give life meaning, insofar as we can answer life-specific questions responsibly. We can fulfill the demands of existence not only as active agents, but also as loving human beings. In our loving dedication to the beautiful, the great, the good. Should I perhaps try to explain for you with some hack-eyed phrase how and why experiencing beauty can make life meaningful? I prefer to confine myself to following thought experiment. Imagine that you are sitting in a concert hall and listening to your favorite symphony, and your favorite bars of the symphony resound in your ears. And you are so moved by the music that it sends shivers down your spine. And now imagine that it would be possible, something that is psychologically so impossible, for someone to ask you in this moment whether your life has meaning. I believe you would agree with me if I declared that in this case you would only be able to give one answer, and it would go something like, it would have been worth it to have lived for this moment alone. Those who experience not the arts, but nature may have a similar response, and also those who experience another human being. Do we not know the feeling that overtakes us when we are in the presence of a particular person? and roughly translates as the fact that the person exists in the world at all. This alone makes the world and life in it meaningful. We give life meaning not only through our actions, but also through loving and finally through suffering. Because how human beings deal with the limitation of their possibilities regarding how it affects their actions and their ability to love, and how they behave under these restrictions, the way in which they accept their suffering under such restrictions. In all of this, they remain capable of fulfilling human values. So how we deal with difficulties truly shows who we are, and that, too, can enable us to live meaningfully. And we should not forget the sporting spirit, that uniquely human spirit. What do athletes do but create difficulties for themselves so they can grow through overcoming them? In general, of course, it is not advisable to create difficulties for oneself. In general, suffering as a result of misfortune is only meaningful if this misfortune has come about through fate and is thus unavoidable and inescapable. Fate, in other words, what happens to us, can certainly be shaped in one way or another. There is no predicament which cannot be ennobled either by an achievement or by an endurance. Said Goethe, either we change our fate, if possible, or we willingly accept it, if necessary. In either case, we can experience nothing but inner growth through such misfortune. And now we also understand what Hölderlin means when he writes, if I step onto my misfortune, I stand higher. How misguided it now seems to us when people simply complain about their misfortune or rail against their fate. What would have become of each of us without our fate? How else would our existence have taken shape and formed then under its hammer, blows, and in the white heat of our suffering as it stands? Those who rebel against their fate, that is, against circumstances they cannot help and which they certainly cannot change, have not grasped the meaning of fate. Fate really is integral in the totality of our lives, and not even the smallest part of what is destined can be broken away from this totality without destroying the whole, the configuration of our existence. So fate is a part of our lives, as so is suffering. Therefore, if life has meaning, suffering also has meaning. Consequently, suffering, as long as it is necessary and unavoidable, also holds the possibility of being meaningful. It is actually universally recognized and appreciated as such. Several years ago, the news reached us that the English Boy Scouts organization had given awards to 3 boys for their greatest achievements, and who received these awards. 3 boys who were terminally ill in the hospital, who nevertheless endured their burdensome fate with bravery and dignity. This was a clear acknowledgement that true suffering of an authentic fate is an achievement, and indeed it is the highest possible achievement. The alternative given in the Goethe sentence quoted above is therefore no longer entirely true when examined more closely. In the final analysis, it is not a question of either achievement or endurance. Rather, in some cases, endurance itself is the greatest achievement. The essence of achievement in true suffering, in my opinion, has perhaps been expressed most clearly in Rilke's words, who once cried out, "How much we must suffer through." The German language only knows the term "work through." But Rilke grasped that our meaningful achievements in life can be fulfilled at least as well in suffering as in working. One way or another, there can only be one alternative at a time to give meaning to life, meaning to the moment. So at any time, we only need to make one decision about how we must answer. But each time, a very specific question is being asked of us by life. From all this follows that life always offers us a possibility for the fulfillment of meaning. Therefore, there is always the option that it has a meaning. One could also say that our human existence can be made meaningful. to the very last breath. As long as we have breath, as long as we are still conscious, we are each responsible for answering life's questions. This should not surprise us once we recall the great fundamental truth of human being. Being human is nothing other than being conscious and being responsible. But if life always has meaning in accordance with the possibilities, if it only depends on us whether it is filled in every instant with this possible, ever-changing meaning, if it is entirely our responsibility and our decision to actualize this meaning, then we also know one thing for certain. The one thing that is certainly senseless and has absolutely no meaning is to throw away your life. Then we also know one thing for certain. The one thing that is certainly senseless and has absolutely no meaning is to throw away your life. Suicide is no way the answer to any question. Suicide is in no way an answer to any question. Suicide is never able to solve a problem. Suicide is never able to solve a problem. This has been Fireside Reads with Mara Hopewell, Chapter 1, on the meaning and value of life.